Bob, did you have a question to ask, to add here?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. One is, you mentioned 5 things that weren't in the Second Temple. Could you expound on that? And secondly, I get the impression from your description that the chief rabbis of Israel, when they look at the Sanhedrin, they don't see, like, it isn't like it's a renegade thing off doing something that they probably look at it and say, you know what, this work probably has to be done, and when the time comes, I could sit in it, at the appropriate day. Is that?
I would hope that's what they think. We have worked on occasion with members of the Rabbanut of the Rabbi. We've had conversations with the chief rabbi on certain issues, and things like this. How they view, you'd have to ask them. Let me be politically diplomatic. You'd have to ask them what they think of it, and a lot of it might also depend on timing and things like this. They might not. They might think it's a good idea that needs to grow. I don't know. Really, it's hard for me to imagine. We are not a renegade group, and we also are very careful. Those of us that do sit, we try and only deal at this point with things that no one else deals with. We don't need to deal with kashrut. We don't deal with conversion, for instance, because even if we think and even if we can, we may put out a statement on conversion or something like that, but we won't operate a conversion court for a very simple reason. It's not fair to the convert, because a convert needs to be able to be accepted by the entire community of Israel. His children need to be accepted, and you don't want to create a situation where you have some people accepting other people's not, which we already have somewhat too much of it now. And so that would just complicate matters. So we deal with B'nai Noach, for instance, and non-Jews on a level of what their obligations are as non-Jews.
And you're the only group that does this?
No. There are other groups, but they also work with us too. For instance, I mean, what does it mean, the only group? First of all, really the Sanhedrin should be, ideally, not the group that does anything. But it should be composed of group of rabbis who do other things. In other words, Rav Yoel Schwartz, who was the one that started Nachal Haredi, who's a very active person in B'nai Noach, and the Sanhedrin has created other smaller courts, like the court of the B'nai Noach and the court of other things. Really, the Sanhedrin should be an overarching court where, all these the Supreme Court, where all the organizations involved and they work together inside when they need to work together. Things for the temple, for instance. We do a lot with the temple.
Yes.
One of the major things that we did with the temple is help take all these 4 or 5 different temple organizations, and they have basically a common court or a common committee for coordinating activities of the various temple activities, which is a very important thing, because your focus is more on this area and your focus is more on this area, but that doesn't mean that when we come together, for instance, every Pesach, a few days before Pesach, the Sanhedrin and the various Temple Mount organizations, they have a dry run demonstration of what the Pesach offering should look like, which does 2 things. It's a very, very good exercise, and it gets better every year. It helps us figure out all the legal and technical snafus that occur so that we can smooth them out. For God willing, this year we'll be able to do the actual Korban Pesach, because you don't need the temple for the Korban Pesach, and you don't need the red cow or nothing. We are obligated to do it now. But that's...
You think that you've reached, after all of these practices and all these bureaucratic snafus, you've figured out how to steer your way through them, and you'll actually be able to...
you're suggesting there won't be more snafus in the future? But we've first of all...
There'll be new ones.
Whether you have them all worked out or not, there's still an obligation to do. Okay? However, most of them, as far as how to build the fire and how to cook the meat quickly.
I'm talking about the bureaucratic ones and the PR ones.
Bureaucratic and PR, that's a whole different thing. And however, the concept of being able to we've worked out some halakha of being able to put a temporary altar on Har HaBayit so that it wouldn't destroy, so that it would be politically correct, so to speak. We've worked out the halakha as to whether it be permitted and not permitted. I'm not. There's obviously there are other factors involved besides the legal issues. However, if you don't at least have a good grounding of the legal issues, you don't know where you can be diplomatic and where you can't be diplomatic. Okay. So therefore, if you're able to, for instance, if you know that you don't really need to throw blood, right, except in the direction of the Mizbeach, then you don't necessarily need a Mizbeach. And the question is, can you take down a Mizbeach? Can you not?
You're getting into those
minutia of
when I'm asking more along the lines of if you carry a lamb or a ewe up to towards the old city, will you be arrested? Exactly, because it's the
people have not demanded from their leaders that they allow them to do what they are obligated to do.
Okay. But it's possible this year. We've got interesting developments in local and national and international politics that might.
If the people of Israel choose to bring the Korban Pesach this year, I'll tell you what an official from the Shabbat, right, from the
Israel law enforcement agencies,
right? He told me very clearly, look, you guys, couple dozen, couple hundred, look at. When there's a lot of people demand it, then the authorities will take it seriously and make the appropriate accommodations.
Okay.
But as any authority in any country, they're going to go with what's easiest, right? Rosh Katana, you say it in English, right? It's like
easiest.
Like they don't make that much money. I mean, they're not.
They don't want to spend too much time dealing with things that can get them to bigger trouble than they want.
You go the path of least resistance.
Let's hope that path will become more irresistible this year and in the years to come. Bezrat Hashem. Thank you for this session, Rabbi Dov. We will be back with our next session discussing perhaps the differences between the first and the second temples and maybe even the third.